Pakistan cricket at its best. 1 minute down, next minute up.
Thanks very much, everybody, for joining me once again. Sad Sadek here for PakPassion, bringing you another exclusive interview. Great to be joined once again by, well, he's a former player, sports executive, and the CEO of Multan Sultans. I spoke with him ahead of the PSL, and I thought it'd be great to catch up with him to look back at the tournament and what Multan Sultans did well and what needs changing. Great to be joined by Gohar Shah. Gohar, hope you're well.
Yeah, all good, Saj. Bye. Thanks for having me, and it's nice to be back speaking to you.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Gohar. And I was saying before the interview, you look a lot less stressed out. Not that you ever look stressed, but you look nice and calm and relaxed at the moment.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's almost 8 p.m. here, so usually it does feel and it's much easier to be relaxed at this time of the evening, back end of the day from work and stuff. But again, yeah, it's nice to not be responsible for, a few dozen people every day.
Well, let's talk PSL. Group stage, won six, lost four. You would have settled for that, I think. Got through to the second stage. At one stage, it looked like you could have made that top two. What do you think about the group stage performance of the team?
I think the I think we did well considering the circumstances, considering the team was new. We were all collectively playing together for the first time. The management was new. For quite a few of the guys, it was their first PSL. I think we probably had the largest contingent of first-time PSLers across the board. So keeping all of that in mind, also reflecting on the fact that you know on paper at least, Multan Sultans finished last year with one win. I know, again, so it's counterintuitive when I say that it was a new team and then I make a reference to last year. So yeah, perhaps that's not a good reference. But having said that, I think we did well. We started well. At one point, it was looking like we were overwhelming favorites, and that's a testament to how well the boys started. I think we caught a lot of other teams off guard, and our batting, especially the way it was clicking, was very intimidating. So that put a lot of pressure on opposition teams, especially if they were batting first against us, that they had to put on a big total because on paper it looked like we could chase any total down, and we did. Bowling first, we only lost, I think, one game. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of learnings, and in hindsight, there's a few, maybe some low things we would have done differently. But I think we overachieved, and as an owner, that's all you could really hope for from your team. At the end of the day, if you're in the playoffs, it takes some rub of the green in your favor, and next thing you know, you're playing in the finals. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. Some of our own mistakes to blame, but again, like I said, we'll learn from it going forwards.
You came up against a team that were on a roll, really, didn't you, in the eliminator match? And I guess they were on a upward trajectory, and that sort of continued against yourselves in that match.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, no full credit to Hyderabad, the way they played and the way they beat us in two of the three games we played against them. Full credit to them. Their never say die attitude. Credit to Marnus for his leadership, to Gillespie and the rest of the coaching staff. Um, for us, look, like the first game that we lost to them, we were very close. We had them reeling at one point. We had 175 and 15 overs, but we can only add 40 odd runs in the last five. Then subsequently, we only had we only had so eh, yeah, and then when we were bowling, we had them down in the power play three down, I think, for about 40 odd. And if we took that fourth wicket, which we seemingly did, but we didn't hear the caught behind, that would have been a completely different ball game. So in just some very tight phases where we dominated most parts of the game, we ended up losing, and that's okay. And that's T20 cricket for you. If you take your foot off the gas, it can come back to bite you. So that, and then in the Lahore, like the playoff game. So again, I'll reiterate to take no credit away from the opposition, but the Lahore wicket plays in a very interesting way. Uh, I think it's something for the groundsman in the league to consider. It's very skewed to the team batting second. So when you create a flat batting wicket, which is what the fans want to see, and you want to see more runs, and that's what supposedly sells. Less so now because I think there's a bit of fours and sixes fatigue in across the cricketing spheres, but I think the current unanimous belief is that you'd rather have a 200 on 200 than a 130 on 130. And that's fair enough. But what that does is it really diminishes a lot of a skill. So you saw almost all the top order batters across every team scoring heaps of runs, and is very rare that teams got dismissed. The other problem is when you do create a batting surface, every wicket naturally has something in it for the first 10 minutes because it's a fresh wicket or it's at rest overnight. And, that day it had rained as well the night before our game against Hyderabad. So there was just something in it for the first couple of overs. And they have good bowlers, who hit the deck hard, and who can also move the ball off the wicket. And so, when we went into bat first, obviously we knew that once you get through the first phase, that's it. You could potentially score 200 on that wicket because it gets easier and easier to bat on. So yeah, and the Gaddafi Stadium wicket this year was very skewed to teams batting second because it flattens out. There's some dew out in the circle. So out in the outfield. So what essentially it does is you almost have to have a perfect innings batting first, and then almost a perfect innings bowling second, in order to win the game if you've lost the toss. And most teams fail to do that. I think the runs were only defended once, I believe, for the team batting first at Gaddafi, once or twice, and it might have been even been a day game. So in the evening games, team chasing always won. So that's kind of an unfair skew towards the toss, which eradicates this large part of the skill element. Um, but again, it's a game of cricket, anything can happen. And we could have definitely done a lot better when we batted. We could have done a lot better when we bowled and not folded as soon as we did. But that's cricket, At the end of the day, been we should not have been in that situation.
We'll come to some of your players who did so well at the tournament shortly, but I just wanted to speak to you about Tim Paine. And I think many people were surprised that you chose him as the head coach. And you say about players playing in the first PSL, it was his first PSL as well.
Yeah.
I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, no, Tim's fantastic. He's an incredible human being. He's a fantastic coach. He's really good man manager. Feedback from the players, the coaching staff, the rest of the backroom staff was great towards him. He really did go above and beyond what was expected of him. He really, took the competition with a scruff of the neck, and it meant a lot to him. And you could just tell, when we got knocked out, and just his emotions, you could tell it meant a lot to him. And that's exactly what you want to see. And he's a competitor. He's a winner. And he's a really, really smart cricketer. So, when you combine all of those things, that's exactly we want to represent and the identity that we want to push, and he embodies that.
I think this PSL, from my perspective, eradicated that theory from many fans that many overseas players who are towards the end of their careers come to the PSL for an easy payday. Now, two examples of that, Steve Smith and Peter Siddle. Obviously, they're not youngsters. They've won and done so much in international cricket and domestic cricket as well. But it was amazing to see them fighting for every run, for every wicket, for every catch. And they just set a fantastic example, didn't they?
Yeah, no, so effectively, you saw why they're as good as they are and why they've been at the top of their game for as long as they have. And I saw it very, very closely because I was with the team at all times. The way both of them prepare, and also I'll add AT to that list as well. The way they prepare, the way they train, they almost train at a very high intensity. They train at match intensity, which is why they're able to replicate what they've practiced in games. It's a shame that especially our local guys or youngsters were not training with that same intensity. And I think it's a cultural thing. And that's something that we cannot change in 6 weeks. Obviously, we can provide that messaging, but it's on the onus is on the players themselves to adapt to that. And obviously, when you saw firsthand how Steve Smith trains, and having him around in the dressing room, same with Peter Siddle or Ashton Turner, that is a fantastic opportunity to not just learn but also adapt some of their ways. And I would say that the way they train and the intensity that they brought to the games is something that all of us should aspire towards, and that's what makes them some of the best players in the history of the game.
While Samir Minhas got a lot of credit, which was deserving, his brother also looked very impressive with bat and ball and in the field as well. He must have been delighted with the way Arafat Minhas performed.
Yeah, no, his attitude fantastic. He's always looking to improve. He's very keen, observant. He's asking the right questions. He again also trains at a very high intensity, which allows him to replicate what he's learning and his skills in games. He's thinking. Uh, he's a thinking cricketer. He is very skilled, very talented, but he's also aware that in order to reach his ceiling, he's got to work very hard, and he has no ego. So all the right ingredients to be very, very successful in the game, and we were all very impressed by not just his skill set but his character.
When you were going into when we had our first chat ahead of the PSL, you were going into the tournament with an open mind. It was your first outing, so to speak, with the PSL and dealing with the organisers and everything. How was the PSL for you as a CEO of a new franchise? What were the frustrations? What were the things that you were impressed with? What were the things that you weren't impressed with?
So I haven't had the time to reflect in detail, because I came back home. There was a lot of backlog of actual work that I had to catch up on. I do. I'm still waiting for some feedback from the rest of the backroom staff to come through, and then I was gonna run some appraisals and have the discussions with not just the players but the backroom staff and the non-playing staff um, as well. So I think it'd be unfair for me to reflect, but just briefly, I think it wasn't easy, right? You have players wedged in for 6 weeks. There's no fans as well, but we're very lucky that we still did manage to get a competition, and the tournament was not postponed, and at the end we did get the fans back as well, which bodes well for next year. Um, and from a personal perspective, I think it was a fantastic tournament, very high quality. We had a lot of good players as well, from every team. And you almost on any day, anyone could have beaten anyone, which is a testament to how the teams were prepared and what the balance of the sides was. the feedback from the players during the tournament, at least, was that it's a very high quality competition. It's not easy to win games. There's a lot of smart, astute bowlers on show, and a lot of batters that can take the game away from you in a flash. So, and the other feedback was that because of the shortened nature of the tournament in comparison to, say, the competition that are happening across the border, um, it meant that the players, had a less tournament fatigue, and they could keep a high level of intensity for that period of time, which boded well for what we saw in terms of the skill set that was on show as well. So, yeah, a lot of positives. Frustrating when you lose, obviously. From a tournament perspective, I have no qualms. I think it was, in the circumstances, it was managed significantly well, and the outcomes of whatever we saw were significantly better than what they would have been if it wasn't being handled appropriately.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. And what would you do differently, looking back at the tournament now? Is there anything that you would have done differently?
Um, I think perhaps been slightly braver. I think in certain circumstances we could have been more brave, um, and we could have taken more risk. Um, and I think we were very risk free in the first half of the tournament. And that was a byproduct of, obviously, less pressure. But as the pressure started to mount, and the back end of the tournament, the games which had more meaning were being played, we did become slightly more risk averse. And that's very natural because there's a lot at stake and you could lose. So going into next year, we'll definitely try to be a little bit more braver, and also perhaps have players that can handle uh, pressure. Obviously, you'll always want to have a good mix of youngsters coming through as well and giving them opportunities. But having a couple of more experienced guys in would have definitely helped in those phases where we felt that the game sort of went away from us, not because we were less skilled, but just because we couldn't handle the pressure as well as some of the other guys on the opposition side.
You seem satisfied and content with your team's performance, but I guess the work for next year's tournament has probably already started.
That's right. Like I said, we're still getting the reflections back, having, understanding what the pain points were, what are areas to improve. And there's a lot of conversations going on in regards to what the future looks like. But obviously, the next couple of months are about gathering the information. Then you get out of the summer, and then you start um, planning and building. And there's a lot of facets to running a franchise. To the third person, it might just seem like you have to muster up a strong cricketing squad, and that's what wins you tournaments. But there's a lot of moving parts that um, have to be managed, and whether it's the commercial side, whether it's the financial side, whether it's the financial side outside the franchise, which funds the franchise, because all of these franchises, or at least ours, is a loss making operation. So we have to make sure that we're making 10 to 12 million dollars a year outside the the scope of the cricket in order to finance the cricketing elements themselves. So look, 9 months is a long time, but all of us are winners here. Whether it's myself, whether it's Tim Paine, Ashton Turner, Steve Smith, Sean Masood, or some of the younger guys like Arafat Minhas. So we're obviously going to try to prepare well, and be ready for when the conversations start of what next year needs to look like. Right now, we're still in reflection mode, and then once we swap out of it, we will start preparing for next year so we can go out there and comprehensively win.
Final question. You're obviously very proud of your South Punjab heritage, and you've spoken at great length about that and the whole Multan Sultans name. Away from the PSL, what are you guys planning to do in terms of promoting cricket in the region and basically continuing a lot of the good work that Ali Tareen was doing?
No, great question, actually. So we've had some initial conversations with our partners and our sponsors. It is something that I'm personally very passionate about, but it also has to make sense in terms of the budgeting and the resourcing. Obviously, it's very unlikely that we do anything in the summer because it's almost too warm, too hot in that region. So any of those activities would probably have to wait till the weather is better. So the players can also benefit from it. We don't want to run them into the ground. Um, and so yeah, right now we're having those conversations, seeing what partners would be willing to step in because they also have their CSR goals and responsibilities. So they can help us finance those ventures where, whether it's high performance camps or whether it's getting some of the players over and having them train with some of the coaches or go on the lookout for some really, really talented raw players. All of the options are on the table, and we'll see what we can get with our partners to help finance those ventures.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I think you should hold your head up high. You carried yourself, and the team was it was wonderful to watch. And guys like you mentioned, Tim Paine, Steve Smith, Peter Siddle, Ashton Turner, etc. So I think you guys performed admirably in your first PSL as the Multan Sultans franchise. So I think you should all be very proud and really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you. No, thank you. Take care, and thanks for your time as always.